Welcome to iChangeTheNarrative, a podcast for and about Black men, inspiring, supporting, and empowering Black men and Black boys. Today's topic is all about the Black man's self-esteem. So, let's raise our self-esteem. The Black man's self-esteem is very important, I think, to all of us, as it affects us in different areas. But before we get started on the show, I would like for my guests to briefly tell us about yourselves and the work that you're involved in that lends itself to the topic or the lived experience. Starting with Professor Burney.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lester Burney. I'm an associate professor of human service counseling at the Community College of Baltimore. I'm also a licensed therapist. I have about 18 years of experience. Prior to even teaching, I worked in a lot of formalized systems in child welfare, including the Department of Juvenile Services, as well as the Department of Social Services. I've been director of group homes, community-based programs. So I've always had a piece where I've interacted directly with not only young African-American men, adolescents, but ladies as well.
Awesome. Chaz.
Sure. So my name is Chaz Scott. Full-time, I'm a cyber defense engineer, but outside of that, I started a nonprofit about 4 or 5 years ago called Positively Caviar Incorporated, which is centered upon instilling mental resilience by way of positive thinking and optimism. And there's strong science that suggests that cognitive science proves that positive thinking and optimism is a learned trait. And we primarily work with kids between the ages of 11 and 18 years old. Their brains are still developing, so we can have a pivotal effect on how they think in terms of their life progression. So we do mental wellness workshops in the DC, Baltimore, New York areas in underserved communities. And, overcoming negative self-talk, growth mindset versus fixed mindset, we put them in a space where, they feel comfortable to talk about some of these mental health stigmas. But not only that, we give them the tools to overcome adversity before adversity hits. And that's one of the things that is missing in our communities. So, we complement many of the formal mental health structures that are out there. And when I talk to guidance counselors, when I talk to mental health institutes, there's just not enough resources, and we complement many of those formal structures. And then also outside of that, a lot of the tools that I use there, I actually coach executives as well as professionals and entrepreneurs to understand how to use their mind effectively to achieve their goals and desires.
Thank you. Joe.
That sounds great. Let me to go behind that, Chad. I am Joe Freeman. This is my 18th year teaching in Atlanta public schools. I am a third grade teacher. I'm also over the math component for K, first, second, and third. I am a published author. I've published 3 books. The first one deals with positive self-esteem and deals with moving around and creating that family piece. Family dynamic it doesn't have to always be your family, but within that piece, if you are able to build on those connections, it'll definitely increase your self-esteem. My second book deals with terminal illness. So a lot of my books deal with grown-up conversation with kid-friendly language. And then the third book that I just released deals with autism. So I do a scholarship every year where I give out $1,000 buy kids suits, Black males with 2.5 to 3.0s, because normally those kids are kind of in the middle or forgotten about. Yes. I'm co-owner and of F&F Dynamics. We do science and engineering. I have a master's in educational technology. We do science and engineering after school. We have a partnership with Porsche, Coca-Cola here in Atlanta. And so we bring about 14 kids. Unfortunately, we have more girls now than boys. Not unfortunately, but we have more girls than boys now. But we bring them in and talk about engineering, talking about how that affects your life daily. And not just about smartphones, but actually what goes into building and making smartphones. And that's increasing the self-esteem through science, through STEM. That's me. That's who I am.
Awesome work. Doc.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is DeMarcus McMillan, and I am an assistant principal in Washington, D.C. My focus is African American males and their life trajectories and how education could play a role in their life trajectories. I've studied policies from American slavery to where we are now to try to figure out how did we get to this place from a policy standpoint. One of the things that I studied during my dissertation was how life trajectories could be impacted by policy and law through education. So I'm excited to be here. I can go on, but everybody else is so accomplished, and I had to follow after all of that. But I'm just happy to be here.
Very good.
So glad to have you all on the show, and we thank you for being invested in the cause. So I want to get started, and I noticed in this era of surveillance, it is important that Black men recognize the dignity that they carry. The impact of low self-esteem on the lives of Black men is a critical issue. Without self-esteem, Black men lose their sense of meaning, purpose, and power. Far too long, African American men in particular have been unable to openly and honestly address the crisis of self-esteem and how it affects the way they perceive by themselves as well as by others. As you know, Black women are not afraid to speak up about their self-loathing or their low self-esteem if it exists. Yet for some reason, Black men are silent about their own contempt for what they are. I was reading an article as I was doing the research for this topic, and the article is called "Why I Hate Being a Black Man." He said that we espouse Black is beautiful, but the true image of Blackness is ugly. If we confront our self-hatred, maybe we'll have real pride. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think that for him speaking, it's probably coming from a place where it's his reality. But I think one of the things that's important to remember is that, lending to the type of work that Chaz does is that it's what are those messages that are being said to that particular, young person or adult. What are your self-talk? What are you saying to yourself? Do you believe that you're able to, contend and compete and complete? And I think part of the entrapment that a lot of us have fallen into, or our groups, is that we've believed the narrative for so long that we were not able to, achieve. And the piece that goes along with that is that we're just coming into a space where we're becoming more comfortable even talking about feelings and emotions. I mean, so many men, and you can even say particularly Black men, we're programmed to not show emotions, to kind of put everything inside of ourselves. And it tends to kind of, for some of us, explode on us in that anger and frustration. We're not taught to, not all of us are taught to have productive relationships and productive ways to express our feelings. So it all goes back to that self-concept that if I can't express myself and ask for help and ask for the things that I need, then I feel like I'm out on an island by myself a lot.
And what I found too, a lot of our kids, a lot of our Black boys, man, I have two Black sons. I have one that's 22, environmental science, graduating this year from Alabama A&M. And I have another one that's 7. And so the conversation, a lot of times our boys are talked at, that means it, right. Sit down, don't do this, don't do that, out of fear, whatever it may be, for various reasons. But they don't get a chance to discuss and dialogue. And they don't have those communication skills that some other people or some other kids or some other groups have. And it comes out in other ways. It may come out in a song. It may come out in a rap. It may come out in a hairstyle. It may come out in the way that I wear my clothes. But sometimes we're setting our kids up, and it's not on purpose. We're setting them up for a life filled with not being able to communicate, not being able to understand your emotions and control those emotions. And then you tend to be reactive. What I've seen in my school, what I've seen in schools and in the public schools I visited around, a lot of times these programs are not these programs are reactive. They are trying to diagnose, and they're trying to solve a problem by putting a Band-Aid on it. You know, if you go a little bit deeper, you'll see why he's acting out, or why he is not speaking at all in class, or he doesn't read anything. But it's a quick fix. You know, we smooth over it, and later on we'll deal with it.
And if I was going to add to that, to what you said, Mr. Freeman and Professor Bernie, I think, and I should have said this when I introduced myself, I'm really interested in spiritual health of Black men. One of the things that I've noticed too, that there's no coincidence to the results that we see. The system and structures and how things are laid out is a direct result of what we see today. And so I know one of the things that was said was about purpose. Do a lot of our Black boys understand their purpose?
Right, exactly.
And I think too, that's like a spiritual poverty issue. I think poverty, when we talk about poverty, we're not just talking about how much money a person has or how many material things. Spiritually impoverished, meaning that they don't understand either A, their purpose, or B, that they even have a purpose. So I think when we start thinking about like self-esteem, and we start thinking about those type of internal workings, those are spiritual issues. Pride, I know, was one of the things that was brought up. I actually think it's the opposite. I don't know if they want to establish pride. Well, let me say it this way. I think sometimes pride gets in the way of being able to express certain emotions.
Right.
I'm so macho, I'm so masculine, I can't cry, I can't do this. And I think that is a sign of pride. What I try to do is, when I try to work with our Black young kings, is I try to let them know it is okay to cry. It is okay to show emotions, because I know when I was growing up, whenever I got in trouble, to what Mr. Freeman was saying, I was told to stand in a corner and not say anything. I was told to not express myself unless it's anger. Now, if it's anger, that's acceptable. But Black boys don't cry. We got to be tough. You got to be macho. You got to be this. And then that pride has been built up to where now, as a grown man, sometimes I don't know how to express myself. I don't know how to show emotions. And I think that sometimes have to deal with some spiritual work that we have to do within ourselves and as a collective.
Right.
I love everything that you guys said. Just to kind of tie in all those pieces, Mr. Freeman, I love what you said about more so a conversation, you know, asking them questions. One of the things that I find is, you know, a lot of us, what we tend to do kind of in our society is we tell kids what to do. This is how you should be. But nobody really asks them the question, hey, where do you see yourself going in the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah.
That allows them to discover themselves and to promote self-awareness. And then at that point, you can begin to develop a new self-image internally in that person. There's only so much that you can do when you're telling a kid to do something. Of course, there's discipline. Of course, we have to give them the structure and the framework to live and to be a self-sufficient human being in this society. But a human soul, this is kind of going into what DeMarcus, you know, spiritual and stuff like that. A human soul can only progress in life if it knows itself. Right. And in order for it to know itself, it has to have self-awareness. So in our workshops at Positively Caviar, you know, we get to those questions. You know, we talk about goal setting. We talk about that higher vision that you have for yourself. You know, in the Bible, it talks about, you know, if you don't have a vision for yourself, the people perish, right? The people in your family, you know, if companies don't have a vision, if a family doesn't have a vision, if a person doesn't have a vision, they perish. So you need to have an understanding of where you're headed. But not only that, say to yourself, self-awareness, the actions that I'm doing right now and the emotions that are bubbling up, are they helping me? Are they pushing me towards where I want to go? Not somebody else telling me where to go, where I want to go. And I think that is so critical in our community. And I'll talk, one other thing is role models. There's not enough role models. The gentlemen that are on this podcast, I'm sure you guys are excellent role models in what you do. And it may not even be what you say. It's just what you you do and how you walk, how you talk, and then saying to yourself, and you may be saying to them, it's okay to cry. It's okay to discover your emotions, because as DeMarcus just mentioned, you can't have that bottled up because that'll spill over into every other facet of your life.
Right. It's okay for you you can feel every emotion that's there. You can be angry, you can be upset, you can be frustrated, and we can acknowledge where, you are, because that could be part of your past. That could be part of a past trauma. But one of the things that we also want to instill and reinforce is that your past does not necessarily lend itself to what your future is going to be. And that's an important piece to me, is that, many individuals come from dysfunctional backgrounds. They may not have had the best parenting, but far too often we see that some people get stuck with that. And because, maybe not being receptive to talking to someone or the role modeling or the mentoring, they let that write the narrative for the rest of their life. Whereas that can be, okay, I've come from here, but I can excel and I can go to any heights and limits that I want to, if I surround myself and if I put myself in those better circles. And again, all of us here have come a certain journey, but one of the things that we can see that's in common is that we've kept ourselves attached to school and education because we knew the value that it would have in the long run. And that's one of the things I think that has to be rewritten sometimes in our community. It doesn't have to just be the athletics or the entertainment, that we can excel and overachieve as well as anybody else in the classroom. Anything that a African-American person puts their mind to, we can achieve on any level comparable to any other race or ethnicity. And that's not boasting. It's just, we don't have to believe the narrative that we're inferior in any way, academically or any other realm that we walk in.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact.
Yeah, and I was going to add just one thing too. One of the things I'm thinking about as you were speaking about that is making purpose popular. Mm-hmm. I think some people choose popularity over purpose instead of purpose over popularity. So many of us have, I'm gonna be an athlete because I see everybody else being an athlete. Or I'm gonna do this because, but what if God created me to be a scientist? What if God created me to be, and where I may be the only Black man in the room, but because of some of the narratives and some of the lies, let's be also true too to it. There are so many lies out there about who we are and things like that, to where, that's popular, so let me follow that, and thinking that that's part of my purpose, and that's never a part of a person's purpose, following popular beliefs.
Yeah.
But you see what you just did, DeMarcus? You asked, you said, what if God has a purpose, a different purpose for me? That's the question. Those are the questions and phrases that we need to begin to instill into our youth. Actually, all of us. Self-awareness to set them up, set them and push them towards their path of, wherever they need to be. So that's spot on. I love that.
Let me interject. We're talking about young men. We're talking about young boys. But what about the man, the Black man that has been just rehearsing self-hatred in their minds for 40, 50, 60, 70 years? Back to this article, the gentleman says, there is nothing special or wonderful about being a Black male. It is a life of misery and shame. And I actually have had conversations with older gentlemen that actually feel this way, that are constantly berating other Black men, Black businesses.
Yeah.
Address that. How do you deal with that? What do you say to that? How do you correct that as a brother?
Let me give you guys an example. And my uncle, I love him to death. Let me say that first. This is an uncle that I see often, and he's pretty successful. He does well. He sells insurance, life insurance, but he's a typical, and I hate to say, he's a stereotypical bitter Black man. He's older. Life is, he feels hasn't been good to him. He's done some time in the military. He's come back home and not really be accepted, and not really, he didn't adjust well. Even though he was able to find a job, take care of his family, and he lives comfortable now. But I had to explain to him, you can pass that down like a virus. Like you could, without even speaking, you can project that on someone else. That's an energy that you got to be very mindful of. Yeah. And so I would sit down with him. And first of all, it has to be someone that trusts you and that you respect and trust also. Sometimes our adults or kids, they don't trust us enough for us to be honest with them. So he's trusted me, and I'm honest with him, let him know, like, you have to be mindful of that. You have to be mindful not to assume that everything, you get the worst of every hand, because that can begin to deteriorate relationships, deteriorate your health, your mindset. But it's hard. It's hard when you see on every news channel, when you see in every newspaper, online or in your hand, that we are always being aggressive, or we're always being attacked, or we're always up to no good. But it's tough. I'm gonna give you another example. For years, I worked with Ethiopian brothers and I worked with Nigerian brothers. And a lot of my Ethiopian brothers on paperwork, they put white male. They were these, and so it surprised me. I'm like, well, on your papers, it says white. Yeah. And he said, imagine all you've been fed is that a black male in the United States is lazy, makes kids and babies everywhere. Why would you want to associate with that? Why would you want to be a part of what you've been told about that? And it starts with knowing your history. So if you don't know who you are, if all you know is what we've been told, then why would you believe in yourself? And why would you not feel like the world is against you? Why would you not feel blessed to have this skin? Mm-hmm. If all you know is negativity. So you have to begin, you got to first realize you have to begin to enlighten brothers, old or young. They got to be willing to listen. And you got to be able to do some research on your own, before you just start doing that.
Yeah.
And I was going to add to that too, to your point about lies and you comparing it to a virus or saying it is a virus. I strongly believe that. And the vaccine for that is truth. All right. So we see a lot of lies going on, like even like you were saying, like earlier, like during the last administration that we had in the White House, just the lies that were spread. And we're talking about people who in Congress, people on the mountaintop and the valley lows, all believing these lies. And it's like infectious and it's spreading throughout. Same thing that's happening with our Black community and the Black males in our community from the time slavery to where we are now, just lies about who we are. And I think what Mr. Freeman was saying was so critical is that enlightenment piece, that education piece, to know. And like I said, for me, education is not just about school, but I go back to the root of education and what it actually means. It means to educe, meaning that I'm bringing forth something out of you, which is your purpose, which is your gifts, which is your talents. And we have to be very, very clear and cognizant of some of the education pieces that we do have out in the world that is not uplifting children, that is not empowering children. Anything that is making something more oppressive and making a group of people more inferior, that's not education. And so once you start to realize, oh, I'm a king and I'm this and I'm that, then you start to realize that all those things that I've heard from the times of slavery to now, those things are not true. So the way to unpack lies is to start vaccinating our people with the truth. And it's just making sure that people understand that for all these years, you've been told X, Y, and Z, but those things are not true. So we have to fight lies with truth. And another thing Mr. Freeman said about just other nationalities, that's also important to understand how they have come to be and how we have come to be as American and the American system. Right. The American system from the original position never wanted us here. Right. Never wanted us here in certain spaces. Like, let's be honest, what we saw on January the 6th at the Capitol was a direct reflect, not of President Trump, but of the first Black man to be in the White House. Right? The whole Trump presidency was a reaction to Barack Obama being in the White House. You know what I'm saying? And with Biden coming back into the White House, they see, okay, they're trying to take our country. They're trying to do this. Now we have all these different diversities going on in the White House. What people have to understand is that they are afraid of our anointing. They want us to be downtrodden. They want us to be inferior. So that's why they keep us down, because they know our strength. How do you make a strong people weak? You study their strengths and you attack it. And that's what they've done.
Wow.
I love what both of you said, and there's I was going to say, it's in relation to the show name, Change the Narrative. We have to define your own narrative. You have to define your own story, and you have to define your own self. And you have to be, I study a lot of neuroscience, so about to dive deep a little bit. There's a new study, fairly new, called neuroplasticity, which is, people used to think that our brains were just given to us and we couldn't change them. The studies have shown that's not the case. Your brain is very malleable, so you can change. You're not stuck. You're not this person forever. And through repetition and consistency, through visualization, through symbols, through what the type of content and the people that you associate yourself with, to what you eat, all has an influence on who you are and your self-image. And this comes down to your nonverbals, how you stand, how you talk, the belief that you have within yourself. So you have to be very conscious and aware of your surroundings. So for individuals that have been kind of stuck in the narrative of the world is against me, or, things have always not worked out in my favor because of my skin color, and they truly internally believe that, you can change, but you have to be open to. And I feel like a lot of people feel like they're stuck. And studies have shown that that's not the case. And I do want to touch on another point. There's a new study called epigenetics. Okay, so when we talk about passing things down to our next generation, studies have shown that fears can be passed down. The same fears that we have can be passed down to our kids. Now, epigenetics, which means above, right? So people used to think that genes were just given to us because, hey, and we can't change them from our parents. So my parents were fat, I'm fat. My parents were bad at money, I'm bad with money. That's not the case. Epa meaning above, meaning you have more control over your genetic destiny than what your parents have given you, in accordance to what you eat, your habits, your self-talk, who you associate yourself with, the type of content that you view on social media. When I scroll on social media, I'm looking for things to support my self-image. I'm very conscious and aware, because your subconscious mind sucks up all of this information, and it makes up 90 to 95% of who you are. And unconsciously, you don't even know. It's so quick. It's sucking up all this information. You don't even know why the things you do. Your friends and your family will tell you do something. You don't even realize you do it. That's outside of your conscious awareness. And you probably got that from social media, right? So you have no idea the self-image that you have of yourself if you continue to consume different ideas, different thoughts. The white man told me this. The white man told me that. Define your own narrative. Define your own. Because guess what? Guess what? Somebody else is going to define it for you. And if you don't define it yourself, you're going to spend the rest of your life defined by somebody else's narrative.
And to everybody's point, exactly what you said, you can redefine your narrative, but it also, it gets to a point where you do have to look at those things that are around you, your environment, like you say, what you're eating, the people. I saw a phrase that says you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around the most, the average. So it talks to your circles. And if you're in certain circles, and it could be mentoring, it could be, role modeling, but if you allow yourself to be exposed to positive motivations, it will change you, because then you start to lift your own motivations and goals. But the inverse to that is if you continue to hang around and be in certain circles and the attitudes are not productive. And so to the gentleman in the article, it certainly seems like he lived a life where, he might have been exposed to a lot of traumas. And that's sometimes things we don't give credit to, that, just going back several decades is a totally different landscape for being African Americans just in general. If you go back, I can remember my mother saying she used to ride on the back of the bus, and that was totally foreign to me. But time is not as far reaching as it seems to be. So we do have to be very, mindful, like you said, of our history. And sometimes we lose track of where we've come from and the progressions that we've made. But again, we have to take hold. We have to take accountability. And the unfortunate thing, the good, bad, is that life is a participation sport. if you want to succeed and be successful, you have to assess yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to ask for help when you need it. And then you have to put yourself on a path that's going to be most conducive to you being successful in life.
That's good. So what I hear you all saying, that it's necessary to confront, just overall what you guys are saying, it's necessary to confront self-hatred, so that you are able to move forward with beginning to see your self-worth. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I have a question from one of our listeners. How can you hold a healthy self-esteem when your counterparts devalue your purpose?
Well, I would say, and again, I'm going to go back to that. I mean, your counterparts, anybody that you choose to be around, they can have opinions. They can have, observations about you. But again, it's what you determine for yourself, your path. What are your own expectations? What are your own goals? Because again, we use the word purpose a lot. If you set yourself on your purpose, if you are strong in your conviction, again, incorporating spirituality and faith, if you're strong in your conviction, individuals won't be able to sway you that much because you already know the direction that you want to go in. And again, it's a difference in somebody saying, okay, let me give you some criticism, let me give you some feedback. That's always welcome. But if you find yourself constantly in those arenas where individuals are devaluing you because you're trying to do something or elevate yourself, then you have to you got to reassess that group that you are putting yourself in or allowing yourself to be exposed to.
I love that. If I could just add to what Dr. Bernie had mentioned in terms of, purpose and conviction. And, I think of, and you can call it whatever you want, but, your purpose, your conviction, who you are is your higher purpose and where you're going. It's a goal, right? So one of the things that I love what you said is when you don't have a purpose, when you don't have a goal, you can be swayed by different thoughts, different emotions. You don't even know who you are. So you can't even recognize internally or even know to even say yes or say no. You don't even have the opportunity because you don't have the foundation. So if you don't have a higher purpose and you don't have a goal for yourself, you're throwing a dart at a dartboard and you have no idea what the target is. How do you know what success looks like for you in your life? You don't, because you have to understand where you're headed. And I love the quote that you said, Dr. Bernie, you're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. I talk about this a lot when I speak to kids and I go out and do my speaking engagements, because I'll tell people to look at their phone, to look at the calls that they made, the last 5 calls that you made and the last 5 text messages that you sent. Are these people supporting me? Do they make me feel good about my life? Do they make me feel good about me? A lot of times we don't even ask ourselves the question because we just wake up every day and do the same thing. We got to have self-awareness. So I love that.
And can I add to what you said, Chaz? Self-awareness is so important. My question to the young king would be, or to the young man would be, do you have confidence in yourself? Do you confide in yourself? Do you trust yourself enough to know that this is not my purpose? This is not who I am. So where's your trust? Is your trust in the people? Is it in your counterparts, or is it in yourself? And when I say in yourself, do you strongly believe that God has given you a purpose? Are you going to trust yourself enough to follow God's purpose or other people's purpose for your lives? Because I like Professor Bernie said, or someone on the call said, if you don't write the narrative, someone else will write it for you. Same thing with the purpose. We already know that we were not purposed to be slaves. We already know that we're not purposed to be incarcerated. But guess what? Because of impoverished spirits, that was intentional. Let's be very clear. It was intentionally inflicted upon us to be in poverty in so many different facets, in our mind, our bodies, and our souls, to where we don't even realize our purpose. And then they put all kind of institutions in place to keep us in a fixed position, whether it's religion, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's housing, whether it's police, whatever the case might be, these systematic issues to keep us impoverished, so where we don't understand our purpose. And now that we're pushing education, pushing truth, pushing away all the lies, do you trust yourself enough to know that, no, I'm not supposed to be an athlete. No, I'm not supposed to be cracking jokes in class. I'm not a comedian. That is not what God called for me to do. God called for me to be an educator. You know what I'm saying? And then also, too, let's be real with some of our kings. Narrow is the way. Narrow is the way. Dr. King said it the night that he died. He said, I don't know where I'm going. I may not make it with you, but I'm going to be true to my purpose because I trust myself enough. And I know that God has shown me the mountaintop. And that is where I know I'm going. So I trust myself enough. Where's your trust?
Right.
What does that mean? Narrow is the way.
That means that even if I'm going alone, I forget which one of the poets wrote what's it called, where the path is
Robert Frost.
Yeah, right. Which path are you gonna take? Am I gonna take the path that everybody else is going on, or am I gonna trust myself enough to know that God told me that this is my path and I'm gonna follow that path, even if Professor Bernie, Chaz, or Joe said, "Well, I'm supposed to be athlete." Am I gonna stand up and say, "Well, that's not what I know without a shadow of a doubt. That is not the place that God has called me to be." So am I willing to go down that path, even if it's very narrow and it's not popular?
Right. Exactly.
Whew. That was good. That was good.
I'm not gonna say anything of that. You guys hit all the points. I will say this. I just feel that with the right guidance, and that's where we lose a lot of our boys, lose a lot of our young men, because they don't have someone in their ear like where we are now. With being honest, they don't have someone that they can trust to listen to that discussion, or to hear it over and over in their heads. They haven't learned those social cues. They haven't learned that dialogue, and they make bad choices, and they don't get that second and third chance. You know, a lot of our kids make mistakes early, and that limits their life just from that simple mistake.
And one of the other piece to add to all of that is that we can't also separate ourselves from the reality that many
everybody's
can you hear me?
That is doing something.
Joe, I think you froze a little bit.
Oh, okay. I'm back. Am I back?
You're back now.
I think you're back.
Okay. Professor, I'm sorry, you were saying something.
I just wanted to say that one of the things that part of our landscape that we have to acknowledge is that, you know, many of our individuals, our young people, are growing up in, you know, really, you know, disenfranchised homes, sometimes single parent homes and things of that nature. And one of the things I think is not become so much a vogue thing, which is, you know, the popular thing, but the reality still lends itself that as well as any single parent or single mom can do, African-American males need an influence by other African-American males, whether it's the brother, the uncle, certainly somebody who's doing and showing a positive light. So that means that if that person is not in the home, then it may be, you know, seeking out those individuals in the high school, in the middle school, in the church, in the ministries. You know, we have to get back to kind of pulling back this cohesiveness, because we've used the term village so long, but we don't even know if we have a village anymore. The village has kind of been kind of taking a beating, and we have to kind of build back some more buildings in the village, because we are, you know, one of the things I say a lot is that one of the elephants in the room is that we as people, we have like this war between our sexes that are going on, and you need dad and you need mom and you need them both to collectively raise, you know, sisters and brothers to be productive, nurturing individuals that are going to go on to prosper. Because what you see a lot is that you see a lot of individuals who are going from their youth and adolescence and development having to process a lot of trauma and a lot of dysfunction that they've seen. And some of them are successful, but some of them, they're not as successful as we want them to be. And they carry that with them throughout their life.
Right.
And to add to that, to just real brief, all that is intentional.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
I agree.
Intentional.
I agree.
Breaking down of the Black family is intentional.
I agree.
I don't want us to start blaming each other because we have to really go down to the root of some of these issues. That is intentional. That it is not a coincidence that there's just a high number of mass incarcerated African American males. That is not coincidence. No, that is intentional. And so now that we know that the system is intentional, we have to be intentional with the system. We have to know that, okay, I know that this, and this, like almost every facet of American life is against me in some shape, form, or fashion. And of course, there's some intersectionalities there that differentiate some of those struggles that we may face even within the African American race. But just to know that the systemic intentions of our society is crucial to knowing how do we combat the breaking down of us as a people.
Exactly. Yeah, well said.
Love that.
Is there a way to promote development without finding fault?
Yes, there is.
Yes.
It's being able to adequately assess your strengths, your weaknesses, and the realities around that. I knew early on I was never going to be a professional basketball player because I'm not, I didn't have the skill set to do that. I always gravitated towards school because that's where I could shine. Right. And it doesn't have to be necessarily school for every person, but there has to be, I think one of the things that always has to be for growth to occur is a sense of humility. You have to be able to say that, okay, maybe I've made some mistakes. Maybe I've made some bad choices. But again, that doesn't necessarily have to, predicate my future. I can deal with, I can correct, and I can put myself on a path that's going to be, make me successful. And one of the things, again, as the educators here, is that we have to reinforce that a big component that is school. It's not okay for our kids not to complete high school. It's not. You shouldn't have to put in place a mandatory 17 or 18 and you can't drop. That's the basic. You have to, in this country, you have to educate yourself as much as you can, because education is the ammunition that they don't want you to have. The more you're educated, the more you can combat a lot of the atrocities that are going on or have gone on with us. But if I keep you on social media, if I keep you on PlayStation, if I keep you in the streets, if I keep you singing WAP all day long, then I ain't got to worry about you because you're going to be what I want you to be anyway. And it goes back to what Mr. Garvin saying, that social programming. I got you because you're buying in you're eating off my spoon and you're digesting all the poison I want you to have.
Right.
I think that we should deal with the issue and not the people.
Yeah.
I think that's important, that we deal with the issue and not the people. I think to your question, how can we develop people without blaming the people? Is the issue is, like I was saying earlier, it is systemic issues, and of course, it's spiritual issues, spiritual beings in high places, knowing that poverty is not a person. It's a spirit. Knowing that the lack of education is not people, that is a policy, that is a system, and that is a spirit in high places, and knowing too principalities of spirits. If you go to certain parts of our country, you'll see where it's more impoverished, or you'll see just like areas of gun violence is really prevalent in a certain area. Those are demonic forces in that area. And then we say this, and we see this, like I said, there's no coincidence to the results that we see. We may not be able to explain it, but just know that it's something happening to get us to the results that we see. I strongly believe that we need to deal with the issues and know what the issues are. Call them by name. Be bold and say, this is what it is. It's not you I'm dealing with the issue at hand. And I think sometimes that's going to help us to develop people through whatever issue that they're facing.
That's good. Anyone else want to add to that?
Marcus, I'm not sure if you were, your statement, are you referring to like education and understanding kind of what's been happening in terms of what's been happening in America?
Yeah, yes, education. Of course, I know we would have to work with the people to deal with the issue,
Right.
but I think it's a lot of things going on, especially like for me in Washington D.C. Gun violence is out of control.
Yeah.
It is completely out of control. Young people, young African American males, let's be clear, are losing their lives at disproportionate rates than any other group of people. Yeah. The issue is mental health. The issue is gun violence and policies. You know what I'm saying? And so my thing is, let's deal with the issue and let's help the people understand it. It's not you. Let's all point to the issue. Because what happens is the spirit of confusion will have me pointing the finger at the person and making the person feel that, oh, but I think what I'm saying is let's deal with the issue and let's get the person to understand the issue so we can tackle that issue together.
Yeah.
No, I like that. I just wanted to make sure I understood you before I said my point. But I do agree with you in terms of understanding, because, you know, when you give a child or give anybody education and give them it gives them a different perspective. It gives them a wider aperture of really what's going on and how I can be influenced. What are the other powers at play that are influencing my life, because now I'm more aware of how I need to live my life. So no, I absolutely agree with you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that before I said that point.
Any last thoughts?
I want to just tell you guys, I enjoy the dialogue. And I always write things down so I can take it back and reflect on it. I don't think sometimes our kids are doing enough self-reflection. I don't think they are meditating. I don't think they're slowing down enough to see what's going on around them. Sometimes you can be, especially in a lot of our communities in the inner cities, they're changing so quickly around our kids that they are not able to grasp any of the things. And they don't see themselves in any of the things that are happening around them. So conversations like this, dialogue like this, allows me to reflect on, you know, what I've done and what can I do better? What can I do better? How can I reach even more? And how can I not become someone that blames or someone that ignores it is even happening? I don't want to become that person either, where I'm saying, hey, you know, I was able to make it out, you know, so you should be able to make it out too. I think that's a lot of times when we say that, we lose our kids that way. We lose our youth saying that. But I also believe you got to let them know it's going to take hard work and dedication. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not a quick fix, and it's not going to be easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. So those are things that I definitely believe in, that honesty. Because they need to hear it.
And Joe, even for those Black men that are older, it's going to take that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's what that whole piece about my uncle. He's a different person because I called him to the carpet and said, hey, it needs to stop now. Like, you are truly blessed, and you need to recognize that. And your skin hasn't caused you not to be blessed. But, I want you to see that. There's things that this skin has allowed you to do that you wouldn't be able to do. So you need to see some positive. Sometimes you need to hear some positive things. If the media is beating you down, everywhere you look, you're getting beat down, and then you can't look within yourself, and then you can't look within here either, then you are in trouble. You are in trouble. So sometimes you need to point that out. Like, you are amazing. You are out, you're doing a outstanding job, and celebrate our.
I want to ask, was your tone when you confronted your uncle, was your tone like this? Or
so my tone, people always say, like, so when they like, Joe, you bring this kind of energy. When I'm dealing with kids, when I deal with things that I'm passionate about, it's going to come out naturally. And if I'm talking to kids, and if I'm talking monotone the whole time, I want you to do this and then turn the page, I'll lose them because they don't seem like they feel like I'm not excited. When I came to my uncle, he already knows how my intensity can be. And so he understood that it was serious for me. That all this passion, this energy that you feel, lets you know that I'm serious about this. What I'm talking about. I'm serious about our young people. I'm serious about discontinuing this. this virus in the family. And so he received it. Thank God he received it. And hopefully we continue to talk. It's not a one discussion thing, though. We always talk about, because it can come out easily. It could easily come out in a gas station or anywhere, at a car dealership. You see, they don't even talk to me. Look at that. They ain't even looking at me. And I'm like, just really not looking at anyone. It's not, just relax. It's not always your skin.
Right.
So I love what you're doing there, Mr. Friedman, because I think you're giving him a different perspective, and you're pulling him from victim to victor, and giving him the tools to say, it's not always because of your skin color. Pull yourself out of it, and then figure out ways to support you, affirmations, and also I'm sure he absolutely loves you being in his life, even though he may not admit it or say it quite yet.
Right. And I was gonna close out with this. Y'all know I'm here. John chapter 5. Jesus walked up, and there's a lame man laying at the pool of Bethesda. And to everyone's point, it doesn't matter how old you are. This man was laying there for 38 years. And he was lame. He couldn't move. He couldn't walk in the physical sense. And I'm going to also push for the spiritual sense. And Jesus said, basically, why are you still laying here at the pool of healing? You're literally right here at the pool, and you see everybody else jumping in to get their healing. What's going on? He immediately starts with the excuses. He starts to say, well, no, I have nobody to pick me up and put me in the pool. Jesus stops right there. He could have entertained it. He really could have. He could have said, oh, yeah, woe is you. Da, da, da. No, listen. Do you want to be well?
Yes.
Do you want to be well? I've been laying here for 38 years. I know that you've been watching other people get blessed. You watch other people walk in their purpose. The question is to you, do you want to be well? He has a chance to answer the question before Jesus just says, listen, pick up your mat and walk. Get up, pick up your mat and walk. Why? Because at the end of the day, you would have been sitting here all day long until I came to speak life into you, to know that there's even an opportunity for you to get up and pick up that mat. What was holding you, you're now holding it. So he could have said, get up and just walk. But no, sometimes we have to pick up some of that baggage to know that I'm in control of this situation. No matter what trauma I may have faced, I got to deal with this. Because if I don't deal with it, it's going to deal with me for the rest of my life. And then, of course, like when you're speaking to our young kings, you got to have a 1 Corinthians 13 and 4 spirit. You have to be patient. You have to be kind. You have to be not self-seeking. You have to always persevere. You always have to trust. And you always have to protect. So I try to read that scripture sometimes before I'm speaking to a young king who needs to be redirected to his purpose, to make sure that I have that spirit in me so that I'm guided by love in that conversation. And guided by love doesn't mean that you're always soft-spoken and you sometimes you have to speak to young kings to where they can hear you, but just know that I'm still going to be patient with you throughout this process. So each black man that's listening to this this message, you have purpose. And if you're stuck and if you're lame in a place, get up, pick up your mat, and walk towards your purpose.
Right. Very, very good.
Wow.
I would just add, and with that sense of purpose, to we as African American men, because we are the leaders, we are the innovators in our community.
Yes.
I remember, I'm gonna tell my age a little bit, but I remember attending the Million Man March back in '96. I took my son, and one of the themes of that day was, accountability back to our communities and things like that. And if the change, that we want to occur, it's going to happen with us as educators, as community leaders. We partner hand in hand with our sisters and say, you know what, we want to come back to our communities. We're there now, but we want to come back in a greater force and elevate our sisters and our brothers and show them the path that they need to go on, so they can have choices and options in their life other than some type of system of incarceration or systematic oppression. So we're going to be the instruments and the tools to making the changes in our community. And maybe we need to form a way that we can galvanize in our cities and say that, it doesn't have to be like this one ceremonial day, but just make a new mantra that this is what we're going to do, and we're going to commit ourselves to this. Brother here's member Alpha Phi Alpha. I'm a member Phi Beta Sigma. I mean, all groups like that. I mean, the Masons, whoever, just to get together as collective groups and say we're going to go back and be the leaders of our community and get our people off of all these other things that are just pure distractions. And I see I saw something else of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I think we need to do. That's a way. That's a vehicle that we can get it going.
Yeah.
Right.
So before we go, I just want you all to tell listeners how they can connect with you on, social media or anywhere else, starting with Professor Bernie.
You can reach me on LinkedIn, or you can also reach me at www.woodbridgebehavior.com.
Thank you. Chaz.
You can reach me at Mr._Caviar on Instagram and Twitter. On our nonprofit is Positively Caviar, and we're always posting positive messages, affirmations, things to get you moving from victim to victor. And also our website is positivelycaviar.com.
Thank you. Doc.
Yes, you can find me on Facebook, DeMarcus McMillan, and I'm on Twitter. You could just search for Dr. Mac06, and you should be able to find me.
All right.
And Joe.
You can find me on Facebook at Joe Freeman, on Instagram at The Adventures of BG, my website, theadventuresofbg.com or fnfdynamics.com. Lincoln, Joe Freeman. Even if I leave with this little quote I put on Facebook today, I said, I am what time, circumstance, history have made of me, certainly, but I'm also much more than that. So are we all. And I had all you guys pictures, and I said, it's time for us to rebuild our communities together. And it starts with positive self-esteem.
That's it.
And
that's
that's what I put today, so people can see that.
Absolutely.
James Baldwin. So you can find me.
Well, thank you all so much for contributing your thoughts and doing your part in changing the narrative. And lastly, for keeping your commitment by being a part of the show. That means a lot to me. If you've enjoyed the show, please let us know. We would love to shout you out and post your comments. If you or someone you know is changing the narrative, please contact us at iChangeTheNarrative@gmail.com. We'd love to share your story. Meet us here next Saturday at 1:00, same place. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.